All right, welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're going to be tackling Azure Functions,
Yeah,
which is Microsoft's serverless platform.
that's right.
You've sent over some articles and your own notes, a
hmm
real mix, and we're gonna try to pull out the need to know info for you.
Yeah.
By the end of this, you'll be pretty well versed in Azure Functions. Ever wish you could just like write code without messing around with servers all the time?
Yeah,
Well, it turns out you're not alone. That's
N-
the whole idea behind Azure Functions.
that's right. It's like having this invisible team managing all the technical stuff so you can just focus on writing your code and building your application.
Okay, so less time as a sysadmin, more time being creative. But what exactly is an Azure function?
Mm.
What's going on behind the scenes?
Think of it as a little snippet of code that lives in the cloud and waits to be activated.
Okay.
You can set it up to react to different events,
Mm-hmm.
like someone uploading a file or a timer going off. And when that event happens, your code just springs into action, does its thing, and then goes dormant again.
So instead of having a server running 24/7, whether or not it's being used, these functions just kind of wake up when they're needed.
Exactly. And here's the kicker. You only pay for the actual time your code is running. No more paying for idle servers or worrying about managing infrastructure.
Hmm. That sounds pretty cost effective, especially if you have like an application that's not constantly being hammered with requests.
Absolutely. It's a game changer for startups, small businesses, and really anyone who wants to build and deploy applications without breaking the bank.
But doesn't this serverless thing mean less control? What if I need to fine-tune things?
That's a common misconception. You actually have a surprising amount of control with Azure Functions.
Okay.
You can choose from different hosting plans depending on your needs.
Okay.
For instance, there's the consumption plan, where you pay only for what you use, which is perfect for sporadic workloads. But if you need consistently fast response times, you can opt for a premium plan where instances are kept warm and ready to go.
So it's like choosing the right tool for the job.
Right.
You're not stuck with a one-size-fits-all approach.
Right. And if you really need fine-grained control over the environment, you can even host your functions in custom containers.
Okay.
This gives you complete control over the operating system, dependencies, and everything else.
Okay, that sounds pretty flexible.
Yeah.
But what if I'm not a coding wizard? Is this only for the super tech-savvy?
Not at all. One of the great things about Azure Functions is that it supports a wide range of programming languages,
Okay.
like C#, Java, JavaScript, Python,
Wow.
even PowerShell, so you can use the tools you're already comfortable with.
That's reassuring. It's not about learning a whole new way of doing things. It's about applying your existing skills in this new serverless environment.
Precisely. And Microsoft has made it really easy to get started with Azure Functions. There are tons of templates and tutorials available, and the integration with tools like Visual Studio Code makes development and debugging a breeze.
Sounds like they've really tried to make this accessible to a wide range of developers.
Yeah.
Speaking of development, one thing that caught my eye in the Azure Functions overview document was the sheer variety of scenarios where these functions can be used. I mean, we're talking everything from processing file uploads to building entire APIs. It's pretty mind-boggling.
It is, and that's what makes Azure Functions so powerful. It's not just for one specific type of application or workload.
Yeah.
You can use it for simple tasks like resizing images or responding to webhooks, or for complex workflows involving multiple services and integrations.
So it's both a specialist and a generalist.
Yeah,
Can you give me like a concrete example? Like how would this work for a real-world website?
sure. Imagine you have an e-commerce website where users can upload product images.
Okay.
You could create an Azure function that's triggered every time a new image is uploaded. This function could then automatically resize the image, add a watermark, and generate thumbnails, all without you having to write a ton of code or manage any servers.
So instead of having a server constantly checking for new uploads, this function just sits there patiently waiting for its queue and then jumps into action. It's like a little code ninja.
Exactly. And because it's all happening in the cloud, you don't have to worry about scaling your infrastructure to handle spikes in traffic. Azure Functions takes care of all that automatically.
That's impressive. It seemed like Azure Functions could be a real game changer for businesses of all sizes.
It definitely has the potential. And as we dive deeper into the specific scenarios and use cases in the next part, I think you'll see just how powerful and versatile this platform really is.
This is already making my head spin a little, but in a good way. Okay, let's take a moment to recap what we've learned about Azure Functions so far.
Sure. So far, we've talked a lot about the what of Azure Functions. Now let's dive into the why. Why are so many developers and companies jumping on this serverless bandwagon?
Yeah, it's all well and good to have these functions chilling in the cloud waiting to be
Yeah.
called upon, but what kind of real-world problems can they actually solve?
Well, one of the biggest benefits is cost savings. Remember, you only pay for the compute time your functions actually use.
Okay.
This can be a huge advantage over traditional server-based applications where you're paying for servers to run 24/7, even if they're sitting idle most of the time.
Yeah, it's like the difference between paying for a taxi ride only when you're actually in the car versus renting the car for the whole day, even if you only need it for like a short trip.
Exactly. And this cost effectiveness is especially attractive for startups and small businesses that may not have a lot of upfront capital to invest in infrastructure.
Right, it's a way to kind of level the playing field and get access to powerful computing resources without breaking the bank. But beyond cost savings, what are some other practical benefits?
Another huge advantage is scalability.
Okay.
With Azure Functions, you don't have to worry about manually scaling your infrastructure to handle spikes in traffic.
Mhm.
The platform automatically scales up or down based on demand, ensuring your application stays responsive and performant even during peak times.
So if your website suddenly gets featured on a popular blog or goes viral on social media,
Hmm.
you don't have to panic about your servers crashing.
Exactly. Azure Functions can handle those sudden bursts of traffic without you having to lift a finger. It's a pretty incredible capability.
That takes a lot of stress off the development team for sure. But isn't there a risk of losing some control with all this automatic scaling happening behind the scenes?
That's a valid concern. But Azure provides tools and dashboards that allow you to monitor your function's performance and fine-tune the scaling settings as needed.
Okay.
You can set limits on how much a function can scale, define specific scaling triggers, and even set up alerts to notify you if certain thresholds are exceeded.
Okay, so it's not like you're just handing over the keys and hoping for the best.
Yeah.
You still have visibility and control over how your functions are behaving in the cloud.
Absolutely. And this granular control allows you to optimize your costs and ensure your applications are running smoothly and efficiently.
Speaking of efficiency, one area where Azure Functions really shines is in automating tasks and workflows. I'm thinking about things like processing data, responding to events, and integrating with other services.
You're right. It's a perfect fit for those
Yeah.
scenarios. For instance, imagine you have a system that needs to process large amounts of data, like analyzing customer purchase history or crunching numbers for financial reports.
Hmm.
You could set up an Azure function to be triggered whenever new data becomes available. This function could then process the data, transform it into a usable format, and store it in a database or send it to another service for further analysis.
So instead of having a dedicated server constantly running and waiting for data to process, you have this nimble function that springs into action only when needed.
Exactly. And because Azure Functions can be integrated with a wide range of services, you can easily build complex workflows that span multiple systems and applications.
Okay, so let's say I have an online store, and I want to send a confirmation email to a customer whenever they place an order. How would that work with Azure Functions?
You could create an Azure function that's triggered whenever a new order is placed in your e-commerce platform. This function could then extract the relevant order details, generate a personalized email message, and send it using a service like SendGrid or MailChimp.
So it's like having a little automated assistant working behind the scenes, handling all those repetitive tasks without you having to write a lot of custom code.
Exactly. And this automation can extend to other scenarios as well, like resizing images, generating reports, backing up data, or even interacting with social media platforms.
It's like having a team of digital worker bees buzzing around and taking care of all the busy work so you can focus on the bigger picture.
That's a great analogy. And this ability to automate tasks and workflows can be a real game changer for businesses, freeing up time and resources that can be better spent on innovation and growth.
This is all starting to sound pretty futuristic. But we haven't talked much about specific examples of how companies are actually using Azure Functions in the real world. Do you have any case studies or stories you can share?
Absolutely. There are tons of examples out there.
Okay.
One that comes to mind is a company called Heathrow Airport. They use Azure Functions to power their flight information display system.
Wait, Heathrow Airport, as in one of the busiest airports in the world.
That's right. They have a massive amount of data coming in from various sources, airlines, air traffic control, weather services, and so on.
Wow.
And they need to process this data in real time to keep their flight information displays accurate and up to date.
That sounds like a pretty critical system. I can imagine the chaos if those displays went haywire.
Exactly. Reliability is paramount in this scenario.
Yeah.
And Azure Functions has proven to be up to the task. They're using it to ingest data from all these different sources, process it in real time, and then push it out to the displays throughout the airport.
So these functions are handling millions of data points, keeping everything synchronized, and ensuring passengers have the most up-to-date information.
That's right, and they're doing it in a way that's scalable, reliable, and cost-effective. It's a great example of how Azure Functions can be used to power critical systems in even the most demanding environments.
That's impressive. Do you have any other examples? Maybe something a bit closer to home for those of us who aren't managing airport displays?
Sure. Another interesting use case is a company called Adobe. They use Azure Functions to power their Creative Cloud Libraries service.
Creative Cloud Libraries. That's the one where you can store all your design assets, right? Images, fonts, color palettes, and so on.
Exactly. It's a widely used tool among designers and creative professionals, and it needs to be able to handle a massive volume of data as users upload, download, and share their assets.
I can imagine. Design files can be pretty large these days, especially with high-resolution images and videos.
You're right, and that's where Azure Functions comes in. Adobe uses it to perform tasks like generating thumbnails, optimizing file formats, and synchronizing libraries across multiple devices.
So when a designer uploads a new image to their Creative Cloud library, it triggers a function that automatically creates those smaller preview images and optimizes the file for different screen sizes.
Exactly. And it happens seamlessly behind the scenes without the designer having to manually perform these tasks.
That's pretty slick. It seems like Azure Functions is not only good for handling those heavy-duty data processing tasks, but it's also great for streamlining workflows and automating those little everyday tasks that can eat up a lot of time.
Absolutely. It's a versatile tool that can be applied to a wide range of scenarios, from simple automations to complex enterprise-grade systems.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here. We talked about cost savings, scalability, automation, and real-world examples. It's clear that Azure Functions is a powerful platform with a lot to offer, but I'm still curious about the how. How do these functions actually work? What's the magic behind the scenes?
That's a great question, and one we'll explore in detail in the final part. We'll take a closer look at the technical architecture of Azure Functions, how triggers and bindings work, and how you can start building your own serverless applications.
I'm already eager to dive deeper into the technical side of things. Okay, listeners, we'll be right back to unravel the mysteries of Azure Functions and show you how to harness its power for your own projects. Welcome back to the deep dive. We've explored the what and the why of Azure Functions. Now, in this final part, let's peel back the curtain and delve into the how.
Right, let's get a little more technical and see what makes these functions tick. At its core, Azure Functions is all about event-driven computing.
Okay, event-driven computing. Can you break that down for us non-technical folks?
Sure, it's actually pretty simple. It means that your code is designed to react to specific events or triggers.
Okay.
Think of it like setting up a domino chain. The first domino falling is the trigger, and that sets off a chain reaction, causing other dominoes to fall in sequence.
So in the context of Azure Functions, what kind of events can trigger these domino chains?
So it could be almost anything. A new file being uploaded to cloud storage, a message arriving in a queue, a timer reaching a certain interval, even an HTTP request hitting a web API endpoint.
So it's like having these little code snippets sitting there patiently waiting for their specific signal, and then they spring into action, perform their task, and go back to sleep.
That's a great way to visualize it. And the beauty of this approach is that it's incredibly efficient. You're only using computing resources when you absolutely need them, which translates to cost savings and a smaller environmental footprint.
I see how that could be a big advantage. But how does it actually work in practice? How do I tell a function to listen for a specific event and what code to execute when that event occurs?
That's where triggers and bindings come in.
Okay.
A trigger is what kicks off the function telling it, hey, it's time to wake up and do your thing. And bindings provide a way to connect your function to other services and data sources.
Okay, so a trigger is like the alarm clock that wakes up the function, and bindings are like the tools and resources the function needs to do its job.
Exactly. Let's go back to that e-commerce example we talked about earlier. Imagine you have a function that sends a confirmation email when a customer places an order.
Okay.
The trigger for this function would be a new order being added to your database.
Okay, so when that new order record appears, It's like someone flipping the switch and telling the function to start working.
Right. And then the function would use bindings to connect to your email service, pull the customer's email address from the order details, and send the confirmation message.
So the bindings are like the pipes that connect the function to those external services and data sources.
That's a good way to think about it. They handle all the messy details of communication, making it super easy for you to integrate your functions with other systems.
This is all starting to make sense. It's
Yeah.
like a well-choreographed dance with triggers and bindings, orchestrating the movements of these little code snippets.
I like that analogy. And the best part is that Microsoft has done a great job of abstracting away a lot of the complexity. You don't need to be a cloud computing guru to build and deploy Azure Functions. They have tons of templates, tutorials, and tools to help you get started, even if you're a beginner.
That's reassuring. So don't need a PhD in computer science to get started with this stuff.
Not at all. If you can write basic code in one of the supported languages, you can build an Azure function. And once you get the hang of it, you can start creating more complex and sophisticated applications.
It sounds like Azure Functions is opening up a whole new world of possibilities for developers, regardless of their skill level or technical background.
Absolutely. It's democratizing access to powerful computing resources, allowing individuals and small teams to build applications that were once only possible for large enterprises with massive IT departments.
That's pretty amazing. It's like leveling the playing field and giving everyone a chance to innovate and create something special.
And that's what I find so exciting about this technology. It's not just about cost savings or efficiency, it's about empowering people to bring their ideas to life.
Well said. I think we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. We've gone from the basics of serverless computing to the technical underpinnings of Azure Functions. We've seen how it can be used for simple automations, complex workflows, and even mission-critical systems. We've talked about triggers, bindings, and the magic of event-driven computing. And most importantly, we've seen how Azure Functions is empowering developers to build the next generation of applications and shape the future of the digital landscape. It's been a fascinating journey, and I'm sure our listeners are buzzing with ideas and eager to explore further. So if you're intrigued by what you've heard today, we encourage you to check out the resources we've linked in the show notes. There you'll find tutorials, documentation, and even code samples to help you get started on your own serverless adventure. Until next time, keep diving deep into the world of technology and innovation.